It's no secret that writing can be lonely work, but does it really have to be? Whether you're full-time, part-time, or just starting out, you'll get insights into the tricks, tips, and production habits of writers from every level of the biz. From best-selling authors to those launching their first novels, you're sure to be in the company of friends as we encourage great writers to divulge and share their secrets. This is the Great Writers Share podcast with your host, best-selling author, Daniel Wilcox.
Hello and welcome to the Great Writers Share podcast with me, Daniel Wilcox, where every week I invite some of the friendliest and most hardworking writers around today to join me on the show and discuss everything that makes them tick, roar and bounce. Today, as of recording, is the 6th of August. It's sunny outside, a bit windy, been a fun day. Been having quite an interesting day getting back into the rhythm of one of my books. So I'm currently about to write book 5 of a series. I've got books 1, 2, 3 and 4 out. I've made the mistake of leaving book 5 until about a year after the release of the 4th one. So I'm trying to get my head back into that, which has been a bit of a fun day. But I found it really nice actually going back and revisiting some of my old characters and getting really familiar with the story and actually seeing some of the bits that I've sewn back into the story all the way through, because books 5 and what will be book 6 will be the final wrap up to the series. And I've got a lot of exciting webs that I've been weaving that come through, so it'll be nice to bring that to a close. But today on this show, on the Great Writers Share show, I'm going to be talking to Mr. Alex C. Gates, who is a best-selling Amazon horror author. And I'll be talking to him about how he managed to make the move to full-time author, why it's important to bring your significant other along on the journey with you, how he managed to find success with BookBub. I found that bit quite interesting, finding out how he got accepted in the first place and some of the tips and tricks there, but also he gets into the nitty-gritty about his actual statistics on what that success looked like and how it's leading them forward, and actually how it helped him, spoiler alert, get to his full-time status. Before that, I just want to put a little shout out to say thank you to our brand new patrons over at patreon.com/The Great Writers Share. We've had 3 patrons this week, which I'm very, very grateful that you guys have all joined. So hello to John Cronshaw, good friend of mine, good post-apocalyptic author, and he's got a few non-fiction books out. So I definitely suggest, if you want to find out a bit more about him, go check out John Cronshaw. He's a very interesting guy and a very nice guy as well. Harley Christensen, thank you very much for joining us, Harley, and Jen Mitchell as well, who is another author that I met out in Edinburgh last week. So thank you, Jen, for joining us. It's nice to see everyone coming over to the Slack group. For people that this might be your first show, over at patreon.com/Great Writers Share. One of the rewards you can get for becoming a subscriber of the show for as little as $1 a month is you can jump over into our private Slack group, where you basically have free reign access to all of our Hawk and Cleaver writers, as well as any of the other patrons that are on there. So we've had discussions going already about how people consume their writing, a little bit of advice on what some of the people are doing with their books. So if you fancy getting involved and jumping into the conversation, then just check it out. I'll put a link in the show notes, so feel free to click through and have a look. Which also, on that note, if this adds another incentive to you, any person that joins at the $1 a month pledge gets access to our monthly giveaway. This month's giveaway is Craig Martell's Release Strategies. So you'll get a book shipped straight to your door. Release Strategies, it's a fantastic book I've recently read. Craig Martell's a fantastic guy. He's released over 100 or so novels in the last 3 years alone. Works quite closely with Michael Anderle. And most of that's in collaborations, but I think if you want advice on how to launch a book, then who better to go to than a person who has launched more than anyone can count, because I'm not going to count for all of his books. But yeah, so join us over there. Again, thank you to all the new patrons, and let's, without further ado, dive straight into this very interesting chat with good friend Alex C. Gates. Enjoy. Today, I'm joined by Alex C. Gates, and I'm going to go straight into reading off of his blurb that he actually put on his Amazon page, because I think it's actually quite a lot of fun, and we can break this down and have a bit of fun looking at the questions for these. So, Alex C. Gates is a loving husband, skilled educator, true Gryffindor, dragonslayer, wizard of the highest order, defender of the realm, Cowboys fan, and connoisseur of cheap beer. He spent 4 years at California State University studying literature, watching football, and day drinking before obtaining a master's degree in education from the University of Southern California. At the time of recording, his latest horror novel, The Demon of Decay, is a current best-selling Amazon horror title. So Alex, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
No problem at all. So that intro is very, very full of stuff. I did want to start by just asking a question that came straight to my mind, which is, what realm are you currently defending?
Well, all the realms.
All the realms.
Right now, it's Neverwinter in my D&D campaign.
Oh, nice. I think I've done a Neverwinter campaign on a D&D before.
Oh, have you?
Yeah,
we just started it. So I'm a Tiefling sorcerer.
Okay, fantastic. And how long have you been playing that for? Are you a big D&D fan?
No, I actually just got into it. We've been wanting to do it for a few years now, and we finally just said, hey, let's do it. It gave me and a lot of my college buddies an excuse to get together once a week and have a couple of beers.
Nice.
So we're doing it now. We've done 3 sessions. We're on chapter 1.5. We had to end last night a little early because it got to be about 11 p.m. So we couldn't finish the chapter.
Fantastic. How are you finding the Dungeon Master? Because I feel like I've not played many games. I've probably played about 4 or 5 times, and they've always been sort of just single session campaigns. But I've really found that a good Dungeon Master can really make or break that game.
Well, again, this is my first time ever playing. So it's an old college buddy of mine, and he's doing a really good job. It's all of our first times playing. So we don't have much to go off of.
Fair.
But he refuses to do voices. So he's not doing any of the voices or anything, which is kind of a bummer, but he keeps the pace up, and he's pretty fair with everything. So
nice. Fantastic.
He does a good job. He's actually the person who wrote this biography.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, fair enough. Because I feel like, part of the reason I wanted to start playing D to start with was partly because I'm a big fan of fantasy, but also I feel like it's a good way to build your story building abilities. Is that any part of the reason that you're playing D&D, or is it more just for the sort of recreational, bring all the guys together?
It started off as just kind of like bring the guys together. Hold on, sorry if you can hear my dog squeaking. Tell my wife to move her.
I thought you said it was your wife squeaking then.
Yeah. So it started off as just like a recreational thing. And then I didn't realize how in-depth the storytelling would be and how much it could actually help the craft. So now I'm like taking notes and like writing down when there's a complication in the story and how we resolve it. Just trying to learn. And that's the excuse I use with my wife as well. She's like, why are you doing Dungeons and Dragons every week? I'm like, I got to learn more about writing.
It's research.
Yeah, it's research.
Fantastic. Because you're, correct me if I'm wrong, so are you currently a part-time or a full-time writer? I believe you're part-time?
I just actually went full-time.
Just gone full-time. Fantastic. When did that happen?
It happened about a month ago when school let out.
And how are you finding it?
I'm liking it a lot. I'm trying to keep myself busy. We got ourselves a new little puppy to kind of give me company throughout the day. So don't get lonely, because writing is very lonely.
Yes.
But yeah, I'm really liking it so far. I'm actually working more hours writing full-time than I was when I was teaching.
See, that's quite surprising. Has that surprised you? Is that something that you thought you'd be doing?
Working more hours? No, I actually don't know. It did surprise me. It's hard to say because when I was teaching, I probably was at school till about 3. We got out a little earlier. And then now writing, I'm just writing. It feels 24/7 to me.
Yeah.
But it's surprising because it doesn't feel like work. It feels like it's just something I've always done and always have wanted to do. So if I'm writing out a story or plotting out the next stop in the book or whatever it might be, it doesn't really feel like work. So it doesn't feel like I'm actually working more hours, even though I am.
Yeah. And is writing something you've always wanted to? I mean, looking through your Amazon profile earlier, you've sort of had books around for about a couple of years now. I think 2017 was the earliest one I could find. But have you been writing since before then? Has writing always been the thing that you kind of wanted to do?
Yeah, ever since I was a kid, I loved making up stories. Not so much in the form of writing. My sister and I, we used to go outside. This is back before everyone had video games and cell phones. We used to go outside and we'd play some games that I made up. So I'd be like, all right, here's a scenario where these characters with these abilities, we're fighting these bad guys, and we'd go act out the story. As I got older, I'm a terrible artist, but I draw those stories out a little more and create the characters that way. And then as I continue to get older and I really just dived into the world of books and Stephen King and actual writing, then I started to love writing. So probably I'd say high school, I really fell in love with writing.
Yeah. And when was the point that you kind of sat down and went, okay, here's the thing that I'm going to do. Here's what I'm going to try and push towards. I'm now going to go from doing what I was doing before to making this a full-time career.
That was, my wife and I made that decision together probably about 6 months ago. My writing itself probably doesn't have the income right now to show a full-time career, but we kind of fell into a good situation financially. And she's like, hey, if you want to do this, now is your opportunity to do it. And she really pushed me to make that jump. I was really scared to do it and nervous. And she's like, no, if you're going to do it, this is your chance to do it. We're still young enough. We have the comfort to do it now. We could fall back if we need to. So she really pushed me to do that about 6 months ago.
So talk me through that process, because I'm always trying to get this around my head, because obviously a lot of becoming a full-time writer depends on your circumstances, your situation, where you are with your partner. And I know quite a lot of people whose partners aren't necessarily as supportive as they'd like. Or I know that when I was going full-time, or when I was looking at kind of making this a full-time career, my partner at the time, it was one of those situations where it wasn't pushing me in one direction, it wasn't pulling me back. It was a very kind of just passive, do what you do. There's no, do you know what I mean? It wasn't like a support to push that forward. How did that conversation approach, where you sat down and went, okay, here's something that we could be going full-time? You say that she approached that with you.
Yeah, so it's always been there in our marriage that I wanted to be a full-time writer. And when we first got married, I kind of just I'd write here and there, maybe a couple hundred words a week, never anything consistent. And then she's the one who really was like, hey, if you always talk about being a writer, why don't you just sit down and do it? So then she started to get on me early in our marriage. Every night before we went to bed, did you write today? I'd be like, no. Well, you need to write. Did you write today? And so eventually I kind of built that habit with her help. And then I finished a book, and I finished another book, and then I finished another book. And on my fourth book, the one that's currently a bestseller on Amazon, that was the first horror book I published in 2018. It was October of 2018. And we had just put our house on the market. We built our house. My dad's a contractor, so we built our house. And she's like, all right, you have this idea now. You want to be this horror writer. You have a brand that you're working toward. You've been on these writing conferences. You're making connections. And if we sell this house, we'll have a little bit of money, and you can kind of take a year off of work to try this full time. Do you want to do it? And I said, I do, but I don't, because I'm terrified. And she's like, no, you're going to do it. And so I was like, well, let's just table it for now, and we'll talk about it later. And so we tabled it for a few months, and we came back to it. And I think it was January or February of this year. And she's like, nope, you're going to do this if this is what you want to do. And we're going to take that risk. And so I was like, all right, let's do it then. So she really pushed this idea of me chasing after this dream.
Fantastic. What was your main reservation? Because obviously there's going to be people listening who might be in that situation where they're either on the cusp of being ready, but they're not sure. People who a year, 2 years down the line can see themselves in that situation. What were the key reservations, and how did you find that you were able to overcome them to make that decision?
Yeah, my key reservation was pretty much my books weren't making any money really at all to this point. I only have 3 published right now, and there wasn't much traction on them. And so when you don't see a lot of income coming in from something that you're going to do full time, it's hard to be like, oh yeah, I'm going to leave this full-time teaching job where I get compensated pretty well and I get full health benefits, to just pretty much jumping off into the dark. So just taking that risk of jumping into the unknown, that really terrified me, because we were living comfortable. We were kind of complacent where we were. So that was one of the biggest reservations. Can I actually do this? Because now it's all on the line. It's not a matter of, I am going to be a writer. I am going to do it one day full time. Now everything's on the line. It's either I do it or I don't. So
it's definitely a motivating factor.
Yeah.
Yep. So like you say, The Demon of Decay is currently a bestseller on Amazon.
Yeah.
how have you gone about approaching this strategy for the launch to try and reach the success or make it as successful as it can be? Because like you say, it came out in October last year. Was it a bestseller straight away, or is it only sort of through recent efforts?
No, just this past week, the recent efforts. So I went into this very green in business and marketing. I listen to a lot of podcasts, read different articles, kind of like follow a lot of other authors and see what they do. And then I just try and implement it. And I think it's kind of harder for a new author to just jump into it unless they get really lucky. So I'm kind of working at slow burn right now. And so when Demon of Decay came out as my first book, I didn't really have anyone to launch it to. And I ran Amazon ads poorly. I didn't really know what I was doing there. So I wasn't targeting correctly. Same with Facebook. I had no idea what I was doing with Facebook, and I just burned through money. So I kind of went away from that for a while. And recently I applied for BookBub with Demon of Decay. I took it wide. It was the first time I've ever had a book wide. And I was like, it's wide now. It's been rejected before, but it has a couple more reviews on it, and it's wide. Why not see what BookBub says now? And BookBub got back to me and said, hey, you've been accepted.
Fantastic.
And that was, believe it or not, the last day at my teaching job. I got that email. So if you believe in signs.
Absolutely.
So I got that BookBub deal, and it ran July 12th. And the book became a bestseller in 5 different horror categories. And it's currently still a bestseller in one of them.
That's fantastic. Congratulations, man.
Thank you.
So a lot of people talk about BookBub obviously being the lightning strike. In this case, it's done well for you. Are you happy to sort of share any of the figures? Obviously, you don't have to if you don't want to, but are you happy to share some of the actual results of how many downloads that I might have attributed to, or what kind of push that gave to your books? Because obviously some people might not know what BookBub is. Some people might have applied and got nothing. I've known a few people not get the results that they want to, but are you happy to share those figures?
Oh yeah, of course. I got nothing to hide. So the BookBub itself cost just over $400. And that was to advertise it wide, not just in the USA. And I probably sold, I don't have an exact number right now, but it was around probably 650 books, which means that I came in a little under what I spent on it. If you do, because it was a 99-cent promo, so I'm getting 35 cents a book.
Mm-hmm.
So I came in a little under, but I think the biggest contributing factor with BookBub for me and what I'm seeing is kind of this reviews are coming in. I've already had 3 reviews come in from it. I've seen consistent sales for at least a week now. I don't know how long that will last, but I've seen that. I got the bestseller tag on Amazon, so I could change my marketing strategies a little bit with Facebook and stuff. So it's kind of like those tertiary benefits for me. The exposure, some of the things that come along with it, not just the income.
And why do you think your BookBub got accepted? Was there anything that you did specific that you feel might have helped secure that?
I think taking it wide has something to do with it. When I read about BookBub, a lot of people say BookBub doesn't like to cater just to KU writers. So if you're just writing in KU, they're more likely to reject you. Not saying they always will, but they're more likely to, just because if you're wide, it's a broader audience they could reach. They satisfy their subscribers. Also, when I went to go put a date, I just put whenever, because I didn't really have a date in mind. So I was like, is there a date you have in mind? I was like, nope. And I think that helped a lot too, because then they're like, oh, this book has decent reviews right now. It's wide, has a good cover, and they just put me in a slot that fit. So.
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely right. The book does have a fantastic cover. I have downloaded it myself, but I've got yet to read it.
Oh, awesome! Thank you.
I'll be sure to leave a review for you.
Thank you.
But one of the questions that I'm always interested to ask, because I get asked this a lot as a fellow horror writer, is why do you write horror?
I have so many people ask me that. I never have a good answer for them. For me, I love writing horror because I love. Let me back up just a little bit. Growing up, I loved Stephen King. I pretty much read his entire catalog from the ages of 14 to probably 21 years old. And over again, not just once, but I just would recycle through his books. And then I kind of branched me out into other horror authors, but mostly Stephen King. And I just remember whenever I read him, any of his stories, all I wanted to do at that point was write. I just felt so inspired to like create my own story. And I think what it is, because I've talked to a lot of people and they said they felt the same way about Stephen King's books. I think he does such a good job at exposing characters' flaws and weaknesses, but then allowing them to overcome those flaws and weaknesses. And it really resonates with the reader and kind of inspires them to do something to overcome whatever their flaw or weakness or fear is. And I think by reading his books, I was able to kind of like figure out what I wanted to do, kind of like what I wanted to achieve. And that was write a book at that time. And it was always horror. And my sister and we always watched horror movies. I was just kind of drawn to the darkness of it. But also, I think horror sheds a lot more light on situations than people give it credit for. I think horror is not about terror and monsters and demons. It's more about redemption. It's more about overcoming this evil and overcoming your own demons.
So, what is your favorite Stephen King novel?
Oh, The Shining.
Read them all.
I haven't read a lot of his new stuff. I don't know why. I've been branching out in my more in my latter years into more genres and more authors, but
still within the horror genre.
So I really love Paul Tremblay in the horror genre. I don't know if you've read any of him. Yeah, but I love Paul Tremblay. So yeah, more in the horror genre. Also a lot of dark fantasy. I'm really starting to like dark fantasy. But yeah, favorite Stephen King would be The Shining.
Any particular reason?
No, I've read it about 5 times, and every time it gets better for me. I don't know why.
Oh, fantastic! We read the Shining, I think, last Christmas. It was my first time actually reading it, seeing the film, first time actually reading the book, and yeah, I was impressed. I mean, anything with Stephen King, I think he's just got a smooth way of communicating and bringing the story alive, which is
what's really funny about the movie and the novel is that Stanley Kubrick I don't know if he hated, that might be a strong word, but he didn't really like the book that much. So he kind of took the movie in his own direction. And Stephen King didn't like the movie. And then they both end up being like masterworks in their respective mediums.
I wonder how they went about navigating that when it came to those conversations afterwards. Here's what I've done with your story. I know you're not going to like it. Yeah, absolutely. So what have you found has been the hardest step going from your previous job to writing full time? Like you say, the hours you've kind of been putting more into. What have you found has been sort of the hardest adjustment for your lifestyle?
Honestly, just staying focused. It's so easy, because I write on a computer and I have full access to internet. And so just staying focused all night. I might have a research question like, oh, how does this grenade work? Or I don't know, something random like that. And then all of a sudden I'm down a huge rabbit hole watching YouTube videos on these obscure weapons that I don't even really need to know about. It's, when I'm teaching, I have the accountability of the students being there. And so I have to be working for them. I have my director who's there. I have other teachers who are there. I mean, there's all this accountability in check to keep me kind of like just on pace, to keep me focused. Now writing, I'm my own accountability, my own check. My wife's out working, unless my dog's gonna hold me accountable, but she just wants to play all the time. So
yeah, I was thinking that there's got to be. I'm looking at getting a dog in a couple of months. It's a bit of a reward for myself for full timeness, but there is a part of me that is worried about that sort of getting a young puppy into the house and obviously the distractions potentially. How are you finding navigating around that? What breed is the dog?
Yeah, I'm gonna actually I'll talk about my dog for a little bit. I love talking about my dog.
Yeah, go for it.
She is a mini double doodle, which means she has both Labradoodle and Golden Doodle in her.
Wow. Okay.
So she's like super hyperallergenic. My wife's allergic to the dander that comes off animals. But those breeds kind of all mix together and it forms a pretty chill dog. So for the most part, when I'm writing, she's passed out under a chair or something, sleeping. So she's not too high maintenance. She's about 6 months old now. So she's getting a little more energy and she's getting a little more was like aggressive in her need for that energy. So she'll like walk up to me with her ball and bump into my leg and be like, "Hey, it's time to play now." And I'm like, "All right, 15 minutes. Let me finish this chapter or something." She's like, "No, play right now." And so now it's starting to get to that point where I gotta figure out a way to burn some energy with her to kind of keep her happy, but then also continue to stay strict with my writing schedule. And I'm just learning that this week. So right now it's kind of been what I do is I follow Chris Fox's sprinting method. I'll put about 15 minutes on the clock. I'll do a writing sprint and take about a 10-minute break. And in that break, I'll usually play fetch with her or something. And that's our system right now.
Nice. And is that a system you follow all day? So however many hours you put in, it's always the 15-minute sprints and the 10-minute breaks.
Yeah. So we'll go from 8 a.m. to about 12:30.
Okay. And do you have a minimum word count that you try and reach? Are you driven by word counts, or are you more driven around sort of just the time and the effort that you put into the work?
I used to be a lot more driven by word counts. I'm trying to go away from that. I've heard some people talking about how, if you don't hit that word count, you get really down on yourself and you're not as motivated to get in the next day. So I'm trying to get away from that. I'm naturally a competitive person, so the word count does help me compete with myself. And it kind of keeps me focused a little better. But you kind of give it a vague number. Between 5,000 and 10,000 words a day is what I'm trying to hit. Okay. So if I could hit that, I'm pretty happy.
Yeah. No, I think it's definitely difficult because I mean, it's hard if you're writing. The only real metric you do have that is in any way substantial is word count. It's difficult to kind of look and say this paragraph feels good or feels bad. So I think word counts work for a lot of people, but like you say, it is difficult if you do have days where you're not hitting the word counts that you used to, and even though you've made progress, you do kind of feel like you're letting yourself down.
Yeah, and my wife will be like, "Did you hit your word count today?" Because I told her I want that 5 to 10K. I'll be like 3,400. I'm like, no, and I get all depressed. And
yeah, and it's hard as well because some days the words fly out you.
Oh yeah,
and then other days it's
Monday was just flying out of I couldn't write fast to keep up with my thoughts.
Yeah, fair. And so how does that play into your production method? I mean, your schedules for books, obviously, you've got a couple out now. You've got the Mask of Silence, books 1 and 2, and you've got a few sort of anthologies as well that I've seen. How are you planning your production schedule? Are you sticking to releasing a book every certain number of months? Are you kind of playing it project by project?
So the 3 books that I have on Amazon right now, Demon of Decay, Mask of Silence, and What's Left of the Night, were all written while I was teaching. So those were just kind of, when I finish a book, I'm going to put it up there and just see what happens. Now that I'm full-time, I kind of want to experiment with this rapid release thing that everyone's talking about. And I'm hoping to get a book done a month is my goal. 1 book a month, kind of stock them up a little bit and then release them later this year in a rapid release method.
And what process have you got in place for that? Will that be a case of including the first draft, any editing, and anything you need to do after? Or have you got like an editor on books that you're sort of bringing in? How are you kind of managing that production schedule?
Yeah, I have a really good editor. I think he's really good, but I'll probably contact him, see if we can work out a deal for a big series. I do want to write in a series as well. So I feel like I've written a couple standalone books and those don't really work too well. So I want to get in the series and see if he could cut me a deal. Same with a cover designer. I work with one cover designer on 2 books, another one on Demon of Decay, and I'm just kind of shopping the field there. So if you have anyone you want to recommend, let me know. But that will all happen as soon as I start writing the books. Most likely I'll start contacting artists, being like, "Hey, here's the idea for my series. I'm going to have 6 books. I need 6 covers made. Like, maybe here's like a quick outline of each one. Can you give me these books before November?" And then with the editor, as soon as I finish a book, I'll get it over to him. Same with the next one. So that way I'm kind of writing and revising at the same time.
Yeah. That's a good way to do it. Definitely set it up so those systems are all in place. I'm in a similar situation at the minute. I'm currently editor and cover shopping, which is, I actually quite enjoy the process. It's interesting, particularly I mean, we can sidestep into this a little bit. In choosing your editor, how did you go about the process of managing that? Because from what I've found, trying to get an editor to obviously give you an honest opinion of their work is difficult at best. It really needs to come from sort of user reviews of people that have used them. How did you find your editor that you've got now, and how do you work with them?
Yeah, I went through about probably 6 editors, and they were all really great editors. One of them in particular was really amazing, but for whatever reason, either our personalities didn't click, or they ended up becoming too busy, or just life got in the way. None of them ever worked out. And so this recent editor that I have, I was on Reedsy, I believe. Was it Reedsy? Yeah, it was Reedsy. Just kind of scrolling through different editors, clicking their profiles, reading through them. And then I found him and just sent him a sample of my work. He responded back with the edits for the 1 page or whatever it was. And I liked the thoroughness of it. And what I really liked, he wasn't trying to change my voice. He was just kind of adding to it. Like, hey, if you said this instead of this, here's how it changes the story. It's not like you need to change this, is the option. And he told me how it changes the reader experience. I was like, oh, that's really cool. Never really experienced that. So we got to talking more. We had a lot of stuff in common. We both love horror. He was running a horror company at the time, with like tabletop games and a podcast and things like that. And it was mostly just a relationship we built that helped me choose them. Not so much, oh, you're an editor with a reasonable price. Perfect. Let's go. It was like, no, we built a cool relationship. And we still keep in touch right now, even though I haven't got him a book in a few months. We're still keeping in touch, still talking. So I think that was the determining factor with that editor.
Fantastic. Oh, excuse me. Yeah, I mean, how important would you say, because you mentioned there that obviously he enjoys the horror genre, how important would you say that is to choosing an editor for them to actually enjoy what it is that you're sending them?
I think personally, I think that might be more important than the actual thoroughness of like grammar and syntax and stuff. Because if you're not resonating with the horror reader, the horror fan, or whatever genre you write in, the romance fan or the science fiction fan, if you're not resonating with that type of reader, it doesn't matter how well put together your sentences are or how grammatically correct you are. They're not going to connect to the story, to the genre that they love. So you got to be able to hit the genre tropes and tell the story within that particular genre. So I think it was hugely important.
And is there anywhere else that you'd recommend to try and find specific genre editors? Obviously, you went to Reedsy, which is probably one of the largest online ones for freelancers to look for work. I've never actually used it myself. Was there a part in there where you could actually choose the genre that you're looking for?
I can't remember off the top of my head. Let me look it up really quick, see if I can find it. There was this other website that I used, and I wish I could remember the name, but I can't. And it was, and I would try and Google it, but it'd take me 5 minutes to figure it out. So I
That's
won't.
fine. If you just find out what it is, and we'll throw it in the show notes afterwards.
Perfect. But you pretty much put in the genre you're into, and you kind of put in your price range. And that's how it worked about a year ago. They might have updated or changed stuff. Put in your price range, and they bring up editors kind of within that rate and that genre. And so it works. I think that's how Reedsy works as well, if I'm remembering right.
You got to love the internet now. I mean, just being able to find these websites where you can just shop that easily, as opposed to
so easy to find stuff.
Yeah, I mean, even going back to sort of a few years back, I used to edit and proofread sort of non-fiction work, and even then, it was always down to magazines and sort of the physical print copies where you could actually advertise and find people. Whereas now you can just click a couple of buttons and you've got everything you need.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So I'm on Reedsy right now for the freelance editors, and you could choose a genre.
Ah, fantastic.
Fiction, nonfiction, it gets pretty specific with the genres as well. Gaming and lit RPG, horror, comedy. So yeah.
That's useful to know. Cool.
Yeah.
I'll pop that in the show notes as well for anyone that wants to find that link. Pulling back a little bit, one thing that I am quite interested in, because you mentioned that you're interested in writing a series. Obviously, at the minute, the advice on the grapevine is that series is the place to be in order to actually keep the money coming in and keeping it fresh, which, I mean, makes sense. Would you class The Mask of Silence, books 1 and 2, as part of a series?
Yeah. As much as you would class like Nightmare on Elm Street or Friday the 13th as a series.
Gotcha.
So,
Okay. And are you looking at making that series within the horror genre, or are you looking at something else, a different
so
genre?
those two will be in the horror genre, and I might even write a third one, cap it off as a trilogy. But they also might act as prequel books to the series I'm working on right now, which will kind of fit into dark urban fantasy, more like urban fantasy with more horror, more horror tone to it. And it will use aspects from that story, like characters, different events from those stories, Mask of Silence and What's Left of the Night, in this new series. So they might be like prequel books.
Okay. Because that was one thing I was going to ask, is that horror seems to be a very difficult genre for series, because obviously a lot of people die at the end.
Yep.
So it generally does seem to be that people who write within the horror or want to write the darker stuff seem to find branches of other genres in which they can kind of bring some of their darker side in.
Yep. Yeah. So I'm hoping to do that. Kind of use like dark fantasy or urban fantasy as an outlet for the horror. So not make it 100% horror, just use horror elements within these other type of genres.
And how are you researching and going about? Have you started any production for those works yet? Have you got sort of plans in place on how you're going to approach the series as a whole?
Yeah, it's kind of ambitious right now. So we'll see how much I actually end up decide on taking off or doing. But right now, it's going to be a 3-part series. So almost think the MCU. I'll have 3 different characters with their own series, and they'll all kind of come together for a big boss battle, if you will, and then just break off again. If I'm doing financially well, I'll break off again, go further into the series and the mythology and stuff. So, but I have already started the outlining. I've started kind of the world building. What are the vampires going to be like? Who are the like government agencies? How's the world react to them? I'm doing all that stuff right now.
How do you manage your pre-production? What kind of softwares or programs do you use to try and keep everything together and plan?
When I'm outlining, I use the old-fashioned pen and paper method.
Okay.
Yeah, so just when I'm kind of like world building, I'll just get a notebook, write it all out. And once it starts getting a little more concrete and cemented, I'll go into Google Drive and just create a folder with the book title on it, open it up and be like, book 1, characters, book 1, setting, book 1, conflicts or items or monsters, whatever it is. And I'll just start filling it out there. And then I move the important stuff, the stuff that's actually going to make its way into the story, I put that in Scrivener.
So why do you start with pen and paper?
It's just easier for me to keep track of.
Okay.
It could be anywhere with me. I don't know. I know a lot of people love going on to like Scrivener and using the corkboard setting or the sticky note setting, and I can never get into it. So for me, it's just like if I'm just brainstorming with ideas, I like the messy look of paper and pencil. Everything's circled and starred and all over the page. I don't know why. It helps me.
No, there seems to be a lot of science behind the actual method of analog in making your brain put your hand into motion, actually making all the
Really?
writing. Yeah, there seems to be, from what I've read anyway, and I've sort of been reading quite a few different books on productivity and planning and stuff. And I'll see if I can find any articles to also put in the show notes. But yeah, there seems to be a lot of what people say is if you want to actually get your best thinking out, then analog is the best way to go, because not only is there some kind of biological connection between your brain and the actual rhythm of writing, but I mean, for people like me anyway, who I admittedly can type quite fast, but I can't write very fast. So it sometimes actually slows you down to make you think about what it is you put in and consider ideas and force the brain to think a bit more. So maybe it's just something about that kicks the ideas into.
It could be too, because honestly, I mean, I might feel more creative doing it like that too.
I often find if I've ever got a day where I'm kind of struggling to get stuff done, I'll just whip out just a random notepad and just start writing down what or anything else. Yeah.
That's a good idea. I'll have to try that, because I don't actually write stories with pen and paper. Just throw down ideas. So maybe, I might have to try that.
Yeah. couldn't imagine writing stories with pen and paper. I listened to an interview with Neil Gaiman, and he apparently still writes all of his books longhand to start with. And I'm just like,
Still
wow.
does.
Yeah.
I can barely write a sentence anymore with just
Do
my
you ever
hand
find
is
that you'll
so
write for a
crampy.
minute or two and then your hand cramps? It's never fun. Never fun. One thing you do have is, like we say, you've got your name in a couple of anthology books.
Yeah.
Is this how did you go about getting in the anthology books? And is this part of a method to try and promote yourself, or sort of how did that come about, and what are the benefits of being in those anthologies for you?
Yeah, the first anthology, which was CEA Into the Darkness, and I'm probably messing that up. It's been a while since I looked at that one, but it's Into the Darkness. And the short story I wrote for that was Drowning. And I had this cool short story idea, and it was 10,000 words long, and I had no idea where to submit it to because not many magazines accept 10,000 word stories. And I didn't really want to publish it on Amazon because I didn't want to get a cover for something so short. So I was like, well, what do I do with this story? And I was scrolling through Facebook one day and I saw this post saying, hey, we have an open anthology for horror. If you guys want to submit, go ahead. So I submitted it, got accepted. And it was mostly for the exposure. I was kind of hoping that was in the early days when I was more naive and innocent. And I was like, man, I'm going to submit this and he's going to put this anthology out and we're going to make a ton of money. But we didn't. I don't think I've seen any money from that. So which is fine because, again, it was more for the exposure, kind of just get my name, like SEO, things like that, little things like that. The second one was with Jay Thorne and Zach Bohannon for their Night of the Writing Dead.
Which I'm also in. I'm going to plug that.
Oh, awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I'm in that one, and that one, all the proceeds go to the George Romero Foundation, who is the writer and director of Night of the Living Dead. Because we wrote that on the 50th anniversary of Night of the Living Dead's release date. And so we haven't seen any income from that. So again, it's not so much for the money with that anthology, it's more for the exposure, which I think, again, and I don't know how much I know just because I'm a new writer at this and I haven't made much money yet, but I almost think that the exposure in the beginning, if you're not making money right now, some people get lucky and they make money immediately from this, but if you're playing the long game, the grinding game, I think it's that exposure, just kind of getting your name out there, consistently putting out work, whether it's a short story, it's an anthology, it's a novella, whatever it might be, you're consistently putting work out there and finding readers in whatever way. I think that's how you build a readership in the long game.
I definitely agree with that. I feel in my personal experience, that has very much been the case for me. And I think that some of the collaborations I've ended up doing have been as a result of being in other just shorter publications, because like you say, even though they don't make money, what they are is social proof that you are working and you are putting ideas out there and you're someone that someone can rely on. And from that, if you've actually then got a backing of stories and different things behind you, then that means that people in the future, it's a lot easier just to be like, well, I've done this. I might not have sort of this realm of books, but you know, I'm producing work and I'm someone that is reliable. And
if anything, you get practice.
Yeah,
so you get better at writing.
So did you go on the Night of the Writing Dead event?
I did.
Go to it. Talk me through that. That'll be interesting. So for people that don't know exactly what it is or what it was about, you've kind of mentioned a little bit about the George A. Romero Foundation, but explain what it is, what you guys got up to while you're out there and what you got out of it.
Yeah, so Zach Bohannon and Jay Thorne, for those who don't know, they started off as horror writers, actually, but now they write post-apoc fiction, and they're pretty big producers of post-apoc fiction. And they put together this conference with their company, and it was out in Pittsburgh, and it was just getting 10, 12, 20, or I think it was 20 of us. It was very small and intimate, whatever it was. It might have been 20. 20 writers together in person to pretty much create a world, a post-apocalyptic world together. So we had all these writers in one room. We all sat down and we started like, all right, are there zombies? And we're like, of course there's zombies. And then we're like, all right, well, what kind of zombies are there? Are they fast moving? Are they slow? Do they eat brains? And we just went through the process. How did the zombie outbreak happen? How does it spread? Through scratching, through biting, through whatever. And so 20, 30 writers were in a room bouncing ideas off each other, creating this huge world. It took an entire day to do, as you can imagine. Most writers are, I don't want to say opinionated, but they all have, they're very close to their ideas. And it was just very surprising to me how flexible everyone in that room was. It was amazing. All these writers were like,
how you navigate that situation.
Oh no, it was beautiful though. Jay and Zach did an amazing job. There was no like big arguments that broke out. Like, no, we have to have it this way. Everyone heard each other out. We all kind of found common ground. It was smooth beyond your wildest imagination. I don't know how it worked out. We were lucky. And so once the world was created, then we got to go home from the conference, and we had our ideas, and we had to write our stories within that world. And so I wrote my story. It's called Ashes, about a guy trying to grieve his wife, and all he had left was a dog that he found. So, and that's in the anthology. And you wrote a story as well.
Called Delirium, which is about a guy going mental from being isolated and lonely. It's a very cheery anthology. So what was it that, number one, drew your attention to this event, and number two, what was it about the event that compelled you to go forward and get involved?
So I was listening to the Summer Book Show, I think, and Zach and Jay came on to their show, to substitute for either Jim or Brian, Brian. I can't remember which one they came in for, but I was like, oh, these guys are kind of fun. I wonder if they have a podcast. And I think they plugged their podcast at the end. They were just starting at the time, the Career Author podcast. So I immediately went and downloaded some of their episodes, listened to them, and they were promoting this Night of the Writing Dead. And I was like, oh man, I'm always looking for conferences to go to if I can, just because I am more of a social person, and writing, like we established earlier, is a pretty lonely existence unless you have a dog. But if there's any way I could get in contact with other writers, I don't know a lot of other writers. So if there's any way for me to get in contact with other writers, to communicate with them, I always try and do it. And so they were advertising this, and they said it's Night of the Living Dead, 50th year anniversary in Pittsburgh at this old school theater where we're going to show Night of the Living Dead. I was like, all right, you haven't even sold it, Night of the Living Dead. Like, I don't even need the writing part. So I showed up to it to collaborate with the writers, to celebrate George A. Romero and all his accomplishments. And yeah, it was just, everything just seemed to fit at the time for me to go. And it was an amazing experience.
And how did you find meeting all the different people? Were there a lot of people there, or were there any people there that came sort of in pairs or in triplets, or was it sort of everyone was on their own? It was all pitching in?
Yeah, like I said, there was about 20 to 30 people there, I believe. And it seemed like everyone kind of came on their own. They might have known each other from previous author events or from conferences, but I feel like they all came separately. And so we all kind of just got there and met in this old school theater that served beer on tap, which was pretty cool. And we just all started talking. Everyone just we just hit it off really quickly. Everyone seemed to just kind of fall right into place. And the conference, it was 2 days long, but it didn't feel strained or rushed or anything.
Fantastic. I do think the live events are something that all authors should attend, even just once, just to see what it's about. I think they're one of those things that they can be draining, but at the same time, you get so much out of them that they're well worth attending. Definitely.
Oh, I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. And before we move on, just from the Night of the Writing Dead section, I'll just quickly plug again. If people want to buy that book, it's called Undead Tales: 15 Thrilling Zombie Stories. You can get it on Amazon, and all the proceeds do go to a fantastic cause. So if people do want to grab one of those, I'll put a link in the show notes for that book. Okay. One thing I'm always massively curious about, I don't know why this is very much on my radar at the minute, and something that I'm kind of asking every guest that comes on, just because I'm very, very curious. Do you have a morning routine? And if so, what is it?
Yeah. I try and wake up at 6 a.m. and and this routine has just started since I've gone full time. Before, my routine was I wake up as soon as I can to the time I have to leave, grab breakfast, and go to school. That used to be my morning routine. Um, but now I'm trying to wake up at 6 a.m. Trying to get a good breakfast. I'm trying to I've taken up a little bit of yoga in the morning. Nothing crazy, just like a beginner's yoga on YouTube. And I feel like that little 30-minute practice every morning really opens up, I guess, not just kind of like my body, which might be stiff and hunched over from sitting at a computer the day before, but also my mind a little. Makes a morning writing session very, very productive, I feel like, or at least it has been so far. So a good breakfast and a quick little yoga practice has kind of been my new morning routine. And I try and start writing by 8 o'clock. So that way I'm not rushing either. That 6 to 8 o'clock gap, I kind of just mosey my way through the morning, play with my dog a little, burn some energy, have some coffee, read whatever book I'm reading. So kind of just everything's focusing on creativity and just kind of like, I guess, waking up into creativity.
Fantastic. So if that's the case, let me ask, why didn't you have a morning routine when you were at the school?
I don't know. I love to sleep. We got that dog and
So it sounded very judgy. I didn't mean that in a judgy way. I just realized how that sounded.
No, I didn't take that way at all. We got that dog in February, I think, or April. It was April, definitely April. And she always woke up at 6 a.m. to go to the bathroom. And so before that time, when I kind of like built this habit of getting up at 6 a.m. to get out of her crate and take her outside, I'd wake up I didn't have to be at school till 7:30. So I'd wake up about 6:45, make breakfast, and then go to school. And I don't know why I didn't have a morning routine. I've just always been someone who likes to sleep, and I'll sleep as long as possible. I was like that in high school and college, and it carried over into my career. So I'm trying to break that, be a little more productive in the morning.
Yeah. I mean, your livelihood depends on it now.
Yeah, right.
One thing I did want to ask was, you mentioned a few times you listen to different podcasts. You've said that you're obviously trying to work on Amazon ads and Facebook ads. What are your go-to resources that you use to, number one, acquire knowledge, and just to acquire knowledge? What are your go-to resources, podcasts, websites?
Yeah. So I'll listen for podcasts, and I listen to these religiously every single week. I'll listen to the Sell More Book Show. That's with Jim Kukral and Brian Cohen. I'll listen to Joanna Penn's Creative Pen podcast. I listen to the Self-Publishing Show with Mark Dawson, and then the Career Author with Zach Ohanan and Jay Thorne. I used to listen to the science fiction and fantasy podcast, the marketing one with Lindsay Broker. I don't know what happened to that. They stopped putting out episodes. And same thing with same thing with Dave Cheston and the Book Marketing Show.
Okay.
He doesn't put out many episodes either anymore. So those are the podcasts I listen to. They give me most of my information. But when it does actually come down to application, not just so much what's going on and like what are the latest trends or what's kind of going on in the publishing world, if I actually want application, I'll always go out and try and find the best book that I can find and read it, and then try and apply the exercises. So like any of Chris Fox's marketing series, I'd highly suggest reading those. There's Brian Meeks has a really good ad copy book, as does Brian Cohen, writing the Sizzling Synopsis. So I just kind of go out there and just kind of collect all the books I could find on application.
One thing I've noticed. Sorry, go on. You can finish.
No, go ahead.
I know one thing I have noticed is that a lot of your information does come from the independent authors. Is there a reason that you sort of migrated to independent publishing as opposed to TradPub?
Yeah, so with Demon of Decay, I was actually gonna actually shopped it off to be traditionally published, and I went to a writing conference. It was nominated for a Claymore Award for one of the Killer Nashville conference I went to, which is a TradPub conference.
Fantastic.
And yeah, it didn't win, but it was a finalist, so that was really awesome. But I met this guy there named Joe Conrath. I don't know if you ever heard of him. But...
I have. He seems to be the testimonial on a lot of Ian Rob Wright's books, and I think they've written a book
So
together as well.
he's a huge voice in the indie movement, I guess. When self-publishing first became like a thing back in what they call the gold rush, and he was the keynote speaker there, and I ended up getting lucky enough to kind of corner him and talk to him a little bit. And I just kind of asked him his advice, like, hey, I got this book. It was nominated as a finalist, or it was nominated for this Claymore Award, and kind of just gave him my background. He's like, dude, self-publish. I was just like, what do you mean? And so he kind of talked to me a little bit about why I should self-publish. I went back from that conference a little more on the fence, did some more research, kind of figured out for myself that I thought self-publishing would be the better call for me. Just kind of fit my personality and stuff a little better. And so when I do grab my resources now from the self-publishing side of things, I do that because I feel like trad publishing and self-publishing work in very different, I don't want to say worlds, but I feel like they work very differently in terms of marketing and how things are ran. And I'd rather personally just find the success in self-publishing, what's making other people successful, how are they doing it, if I don't have these deep pockets of traditional publishers who could just throw money at ads and throw money at their marketing. So what are these more savvy indie publishers doing? So that's why I look a lot at a lot of the indie publishers. I'm
also not really aware of any trad pub podcasts or resources.
Yeah, there might not be any, to be honest. I've never really looked.
I guess they're just behind the doors that the rest of the books are locked up behind. Yeah. Not that I'm weighted in one direction at all. Okay, so I am conscious that we are running out of time. So are you happy to go into our, I know it flies, are you happy to fire into our quick fire round?
Let's do it.
Cool, this will be fun. So 10 quick questions, as fast as you can. Try not to think too much about them, and it's all just in fun. So let's go. Pennywise or Voldemort?
Pennywise.
What's your favorite TV show of all time?
Stranger Breaking Bad things.
I've not seen those two mixed together. I'll have to check that out. Preferred sandwich filling of choice?
One more time.
Preferred sandwich filling of choice?
Sandwich filling?
Yeah.
Like what meat I put in it?
Just anything that you put between the bread.
Okay.
That might be an English crossover.
Turkey. Yeah.
Boats or planes?
Planes.
Who was the last writer to make you cry?
Paul Tremblay.
Worst film of all time?
Oh, jeez. Now you're really putting me on the spot. I can give you a best film of all time quick. Worst film of all time? Hold on. Thanksgiving.
Okay. And what's your best film, just out of interest?
The Dark Knight.
Fantastic. Good choice. What's your favorite kind of cheese?
Oh, man. Brie. Oh, no, anything goat cheese. Goat cheese.
Do you have a dream holiday destination, and where is that?
Anywhere on a beach.
Is there a Christmas present that you wished you got but never received?
Yeah, that's so funny. One year I wanted football pads to start playing Pop Warner football. I was like 8 years old. I never got them. I was super disappointed.
Man. And what's your favorite song?
My favorite song?
Yeah.
Simple Man by Leonard Skinner.
Fantastic. Cool. How was that?
That was awesome.
That's it. It's over. I might expand those to 20 questions, see how people deal under that pressure.
Keep them under that.
I most likely won't. Okay, so to finish up, where can listeners find out more about yourself and your work and everything that you're up to?
Yeah, I have a website. It's just simply alexcgates.com. And it's one page. It has a picture of all my books. So if you want any of my books, just go to alexcgates.com. Click on the book you want. It'll take you to the Amazon page, and you can buy a book from there. Or you just go to Amazon and type in Alex C. Gates, and my name will show up.
And then you're on social media as well?
I am on social media. I don't really do much on social media. So if you guys want to follow a page that is pretty pretty dry, you could follow me on Instagram at Alex C. Gates, or on Facebook at Alex C. Gates. So
perfect.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for joining me, Alex. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, it's been a ton of fun. Thank you for having me.
No worries. I'm sure we'll keep in touch.
Oh, yeah.
And thank you, everyone, for listening, and we'll see you next week. Thank you for joining me for this week's episode of the Great Writer Share podcast. Next week, I'll be talking to USA Today bestselling author of sci-fi and fantasy fiction, Alison Ingleby. Just a reminder that if you want to get early access to episodes of the show, as well as be entered into our monthly giveaways and join us over in our private Slack group, then you can join us over at patreon.com/greatwritersshare. That's patreon.com/greatwritersshare. And from there you can join for as little as $1 a month and get access to a load of extra bonus content. Until next time.